Beetlejuice 2. And I just want to refresh people's memory because the original Beetlejuice, the first Beetlejuice, happened back in 1988. It's the story of a deceased couple, a newly deceased couple, played by Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis, at the height of their collective beautifulness. I think they died in a car accident, and they are sort of doomed to haunt their country home. They are harassed by this awful family from the city that moves in, and so they try to drive them out, but they have to hire this creature Beetlejuice to get them out, and of course it backfires on them, and their whole lives change. Everything goes upside down, and now we're coming back to that, revisiting it. Bill, why don't you give us the plot of Beetlejuice Beetlejuice?
Yes. Plot. I shouldn't say that. There is a story. It's just kind of threadbare and very by the numbers. So, now we're 35 years later. Lydia Dietz is the host of a Ghost Hunters type show, and she's dating her producer, who's a complete fraud and a manipulator. He's a discount Otho. He's played by Justin Theroux. She's kind of estranged from her daughter, Astrid, played by Jenna Ortega. And as the film is set in motion, her father, Charles, who was previously played by Jeffrey Jones, has died. Not to spoil anything, but they have a lot of fun with Charles's death. I will, given what we know now about Jeffrey Jones, obviously he wasn't going to be brought back for this. So the way they handle him is a lot of fun. I will grant that. Meanwhile, Beetlejuice has somehow created a whole thriving business out of his bioexorcism, to the point where he runs a full office full of these shrunken head zombies. His ex-wife, Dolores, played by Monica Bellucci, escapes from whatever boxes her severed, dismembered parts were in. She staples herself back together, and she's a soul-sucking witch, literally, who is now hunting for him. So he's still stalking Lydia 35 years later to try to get back to the real world. Dolores is hunting him down, trying to devour his soul, which I guess is another form of death for the dead apart from exorcism. I have in my closet somewhere an actual handbook for the recently deceased. It's just a journal that you write, and it's completely blank. So in my mind, it was written by agnostics. But it's this. There's basically these two parallel stories going on, where Lydia is trying to deal with her father's death, being roped into a quickie marriage to this Rory character, and dealing with her daughter, who just hates her because something generational trauma something. While of course she's off, Jenna Ortega, she's off, just being mopey, and oh look, there's a cute boy. Let's derail the plot for this. And it's hard to parse this movie, because you see a lot of the hallmarks of what made the original great. There are some really fun ideas, really funny depictions of death. The neither world, for lack of a better term, I know that was just used for the cartoon and not in the movies, but I stick with that. It's still very creative, but part of what made the original movie so great is that you had Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis as the straight men to counterbalance all this, and you really don't have that character this time around. In fact, Adam and Barbara Maitland are literally just waved off with one line for them not being there, and it's cringeworthy how easily it's dismissed. Whereas you could take a risk with Lydia back in 1988 to basically make her, resent her stepmother, but not actively hate her, and have a good relationship with her father, but still be gothy, emo, and even suicidal, because she just doesn't feel like a normal person. We don't have that with Astrid. Jenna Ortega is a fine actress, but she's terrible in this because she's given nothing to work with. She's there because they want the audience to say, "Oh, I remember her. She's in Wednesday. Let's go watch that on Netflix after we're done here." You know, and part of it I think is because back in '88, Winona Ryder was just starting out, and she was 16 when this movie came out. She was an actual teenager. So you could actually buy her as any random girl you would meet on the street. You had this girl in your school. You know, maybe exaggerated, but you knew someone like her. Whereas Astrid is, Jenna Ortega's going to be 22 in a couple of weeks. And we've watched her on TV and film for more than a decade. We've watched her literally grow up into an adult. So we can't really buy her as a teenager, even though it's not that big of an age difference. We really can't buy it. You see a real teenager in Winona Ryder in 1988, and you see an actress pretending to be a teenager with Jenna Ortega. And again, there's nothing really to explain her mopiness other than rebelling teenager trope. Everything is my parents' fault. I'm perfect. I have no flaws. The whole movie is about everybody coming to accept me rather than me taking a journey. And that's just not what this film, this series now, I guess, and Tim Burton is supposed to be about. It's like the reason we love Beetlejuice so much, the reason it's a timeless classic is because it was completely unexpected. You had no idea what was going to happen from one scene to the next. The Deo scene is a timeless comedy miracle. It is one of the greatest scenes in cinema history because you had no idea it was coming. The only clue you got was the fact that there's other Harry Belafonte tracks playing in the background in a few scenes. And then, Alec Baldwin says, "Hey, I've got a plan." He doesn't tell you what the plan is. It just happens. Here, the film opens with a kind of a recreation of the overhead drone shots of the miniatures. Only now it's like enhanced by storm effects because more technology. And they're playing MacArthur Park. Well, I already know what song they're going to use to try to one up the Deo scene. Is like, and that's the core problem here. The biggest sin this movie commits is that it is entirely predictable. Nearly every story and character beat I could pin down within 5 minutes. And that just shouldn't happen. Part of the conflict between Astrid and Lydia is that, her ex-husband / Astrid's father is dead, and Lydia can't see her ghost. The ghost never comes to visit or whatever, so she thinks Lydia's a fraud. Well, it's like, no, your own rules establish this. Why could Lydia see Adam and Barbara? It's right there in the handbook. Living people often ignore the strange and unusual. I myself am strange and unusual. Astrid is almost aggressively ordinary. She's a cardboard cutout made from studio notes. From the moment she, meets up with Arthur Conti as Jeremy, oh, look, cute boy, every single place this is going to go. Now, and it's just so frustrating, but I will say this. I still enjoyed myself on a base level. Catherine O'Hara steals every goddamn scene she's in. She is just a marvel and keeps proving why she's one of the greatest comedic forces of the last, 4 decades. Willem Dafoe has a really fun minor role as this dead actor who becomes a paranormal detective in the afterlife. Just like with Cage playing Longlegs, Willem Dafoe in this role it's just pure distilled Dafoe. Michael Keaton absolutely thrives in every second. Like it really is as if there was no time between the movies. Like Beetlejuice is still Beetlejuice to his core. And his manic energy is what sells a lot of the great moments. There are some jokes that don't work, like there's a Soul Train, which just makes you wonder, well, what did they do before the show? And a lot of the more ribald humor is taken out because a 1988 PG is way harsher than a 2024 PG-13 movie, evidenced by the fact that this is just one of those minor things that irks me. I'm not gonna swear, but there's a moment where Michael Keaton drops an F-bomb, It's a great moment. And then a few scenes later, he drops another one. But because you only get one in a PG-13 movie, they bleeped the second one. I was like, you're playing it too safe. If this is the line to say what was once PG is now R, take the damn R, Tim.
My favorite Tim Burton is early Tim Burton. I thought he made some really great work. When you look at Ed Wood, Edward Scissorhands, Beetlejuice, those are, to me, the sort of the quintessential core drives of Tim Burton movies. And I'll definitely see this movie, just because I'm curious and I'm still in love with Winona Ryder for 30 years. But like, yeah, again, my same question. Do we need this film?
This one I can decidedly say no, especially because there are so many avenues where Tim Burton of 30 years ago would have gone down them in a heartbeat. The fact that Lydia has quote unquote sold out and got famous hosting this ghost hunter show in the 80s and early 90s, Tim Burton would have made an entire movie out of how she became a ghost hunter, whether she's faking it, whether the whole thing is BS, which it is, and all that fun stuff. He would have had a field day with that. There's an early scene where Delia, when she learns of Charles's death, has to cancel an art installation that she was doing, and the collaborator she was working with gets really ticked off, and he storms out of the gallery and immediately falls down a manhole to his death. It's a funny scene. And then he shows up in the waiting room having no idea what to do because there's a language barrier. He only speaks French. I was like, that should have been a running gag throughout the entire movie. It's abandoned after 5 minutes. There's this Danny DeVito has a cameo as a janitor in the afterlife, and he's framed in the first of his two scenes as if it's this like big reveal, like, oh my god, we're gonna see somebody important. Like, it's Danny DeVito. He's shot from the back. We know what Danny DeVito looks like. His physical appearance has not changed in 50 years. Just the amount of hair on his head. It's like, even from the back, we know exactly who it is. So why are you treating this as if it's this huge moment? Especially when you're just gonna unceremoniously get rid of him in the next scene. So it's like, it's like Tim Burton had a really good idea for where he wanted to go with this, and rather than fight the powers that be, he was just like, you know what, whatever, do what you want, so I can get a hit for once. Because I mean, the last movie he did was the god-awful Dumbo remake. I mean, Rotten Tomatoes pointed this out yesterday because it crept over the line 75% to get certified fresh. It's at 76 as we're recording this. And that's his first certified fresh film since Frankenweenie. Big Eyes got close. It got to 72. And I love Big Eyes. That to me was his last great movie. And I think it's underappreciated. But to go 12 years without any real critical success, I think he's just like, I want to see what I can do with these characters again, but I'm willing to compromise whatever it takes to basically get it to a point of success. And it won the weekend box office. It'll probably win another one. But it feels oddly soulless, and for this universe in particular, that feels like a sin. But again, it's still good enough. Like, you could still sit there, eat your popcorn out of your bob shaped bucket and enjoy yourself. But it's a good, competent film. It's a terrible follow-up to Beetlejuice.
We're going to put that on the poster. It's good enough.
This is the BTRP Media Network.